Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you all for your attendance on what is undoubtedly a very busy Silverstone Grand Prix weekend. In the spirit of keeping this short, as promised, we're going to go ahead and call this at 9:15. So without further ado, it is my pleasure on this 4th of July to introduce Mr. Tim Mayer.
Well, thank you all for being here. I'm Tim Mayer, and today I'm announcing my candidacy for president of the FIA. Our campaign is called FIA Forward because it's time for new energy, new focus, and renewed integrity at the heart of our federation. It's the promise of professionalism, growth, and service to our member clubs and for the future of motorsports and mobility. I've spent 34 years in this world. My journey began in IndyCar racing. I've been a TV producer, a promoter, an organizer, and an official. I was Senior Vice President for Racing Operations for Champ Car, running events across North America, South America, Asia, and Europe. As Chief Operating Officer of IMSA, I oversaw major sports car championships, including the American Le Mans Series, which is where I first collaborated with the FIA. Since 1998, I've been a director of our ASM. For 16 years, I served as a deputy on the World Motorsport Council, worked across numerous FIA commissions, served as a race director, mentor, steward in almost every FIA discipline, from rallycross to sports cars, touring cars, to chairman of the stewards of Formula One. I've organized thousands of marshals, officials, safety workers at 19 Formula One Grand Prix and dozens of other World Championship events. I know what it takes to lead a global organization, one that partners with teams, partners with the stars, our drivers, nurtures professional officiating, and treats stakeholders with respect. I know FIA governance, and I know what it will take to hold this organization accountable. But above all, I know where the FIA can make the greatest difference, supporting our member clubs, especially those in underserved regions. Years ago at a Grassroots Motorsports Forum, a woman from an African ASN said to me, for me, it's actually trying to find $5 for bus fare for my marshals to bring them to the track. That story has stuck with me. That's Grassroots, not Formula 4, not $1 million karting. It's the club scraping together funds for their first autocross track, a few secondhand carts, a handful of volunteers. And if we're serious about real growth, that's where we must focus. The FIA has a duty to deliver the basics: clear rules, cost-effective, accessible tools, and proper training. And for our international championships, we have an unprecedented opportunity to be better partners for sports development. As a federation, we should listen to our stakeholders, chart long-term plans for regulations that encourage growth, and we must nurture a deep pool of talented officials who are respected, supported, and free from interference. But it's not only about sport at the FIA. The FIA's most lasting legacy may lie in mobility. Mobility is about access. It's about dignity and opportunity. Our member clubs already help millions through roadside support, licensing, tourism, safety, and sustainability. The FIA should help those mobility clubs' businesses thrive, adding value instead of bureaucracy. We should deliver practical resources for the growth of those clubs and for advocacy so that every club can shape its national agenda. And we will champion emerging clubs through a mobility equity framework, delivering the tools, funding, and visibility that they need to succeed. Above all, FIA member clubs should feel proud to belong to the FIA, not burdened by it. but we have to be honest about where we are today. 3 years ago, Mohammed bin Sulayem ran on good ideas, value for smaller clubs, transparency, reform. The message was right, the delivery has failed. Instead of reform, we've seen performance. Behind the stagecraft, we've been left with the illusion of progress and the illusion of leadership, while the most senior team he appointed has departed. The illusion of inclusion, while capable voices, especially women and those from diverse backgrounds, were pushed out when they spoke the truth. The illusion of a financial turnaround, when the FIA has merely returned to pre-pandemic norms, but now with less independent oversight. The illusion of transparency and engagement, even as decision-making grows more centralized and dissent is punished. And perhaps most corrosive, the illusion of integrity. In 4 General Assemblies, we've witnessed wave after wave of statute amendments presented as modernization or democracy, but in reality ushering in the greatest centralization of power in the FIA's history. Critical issues are decided through rushed electronic votes with no opportunity for debate. World councils are gagged and stripped of their ability to represent their members. Senate members have been pushed out for exercising their financial or ethics oversight. That's not governance. Real governance is built on values. Genuine democracy, where every club has a respected voice. Diverse perspectives as a structural priority of the FIA. A culture that welcomes challenge and debate. Transparency, transparent reporting, and honest evaluations. Good governance isn't about control. It's about service. The FIA must serve its members, not the other way around. Over the coming months, you'll meet the rest of my team, professionals from every discipline and every region dedicated to the Federation's success. We will meet with member clubs, listen to their ideas, and incorporate them into our agenda. This campaign is bigger than personalities, it's about principles. We will never pressure clubs to issue public endorsements. That's not democracy. The only vote that matters is their independent vote, their independent choice of the member clubs in December. We plan to earn the trust of those clubs to show them that there is a better way forward to a federation that delivers real value, real partnership, and real leadership. Forward to a federation that is trusted, honest, and respected. Forward to a federation that every member club can be proud of. Together, we can drive the FIA forward. Now, before I take questions, I have at least one big thank you to make. And this is an emotional one for me. This has been a long journey. This has been 6 months in the making for us. And my wife, Katie, who's in the back, has lived every second of this. And it's been an up and down journey, I can tell you, to get to this moment. So thank you. I don't know all of you, so I'm going to ask James Allen, if he will, from Motorsport Network, to help me a little bit with this, so that we can get some questions going. And James, why don't you start with the first question?
Yeah, can I start with the elephant in the room? You obviously were removed from your position in Formula One by the current president. Is this a kind of revenge? Is that what's motivating this? And secondly, Carlos Sainz put his hat in the ring, but it was obviously a kind of test the waters thing. Is this in any way linked to that, or?
Well, let me answer the second one first. No, I haven't actually spent much time speaking with Carlos. I have spoken to him. You know, this is a very difficult task. And, you know, we've been working at it for 6 months, but where our two discussions weren't linked. I'm glad you asked about Mohammed. You know, obviously that was disappointing for me because my commitment has always been to service. As you know, the stewards are volunteers, all volunteers. I have had the privilege of stewarding multiple championships across the FIA's spectrum of sport. But this is not about that. What it did was give me an opportunity to sit down and reflect on where we are as a federation. And I have always been committed to service. When I was engaged as a professional organizer of IndyCar or as a professional organizer of sports cars, it was always about serving the people that worked for me, servant leadership. And what I see is a failure in leadership right now. So it's given me an opportunity. This is not about revenge. It's about how we can drive the FIA forward. It's about what we can do better in this campaign and as we go forward 4 years after that.
Does this feel like a poker game where the other side gets to see your hand? And how difficult is that going to make your challenge?
You have to put your head above the parapet at some point. And we have to go campaign with the 245 member clubs that have the vote. So this was the right time. The time now to do it now is based off of the General Assembly at Macau that just happened 2 weeks ago. So from Macau, we actually now know what the rules of engagement are. And we have the opportunity now to have set our team in place behind the scenes. And we will be going out and campaigning and earning that trust from those clubs. So that's the time.
We'll let them manage it, so otherwise we get out of control. Joe.
One of the things that many of the clubs are afraid of is to have their vote taken away, or the value of their vote taken away. Are you going to change the electoral system if you can when you get in?
You know, it's very easy to look at the electoral system and sort of think, well, okay, why does Trinidad have the same number of votes as the United States? I actually happen to think that there is some equity in that. The FIA needs to serve all its clubs, all its members. You know, whether it's Motorsport UK here or in the United States, we can take care of ourselves. It's the little clubs that can't take care of themselves that need the help of the FIA. They need that service. They need that professionalism. So they should have maybe an outsized voice in what we do as a federation. So as much as it looks a little odd from the outside, I actually believe that there is some value in allowing the smaller clubs to have that vote.
Just could you give the name and the publication? You ask the question.
Ian Clark's Racing News 365. Two-part question. So you say you've been working on this for 6 months. So can you give us an idea as to what you've been doing over that 6 months? And obviously this seems a little late today to announce a candidate. So what's the plan for the next few months? And secondly, when a respected figure, not respected of course, but something like Carlos Sainz Sr. announces that he might consider running, and you would have thought he would have garnered a lot of support given his history and background, but then pulls out, what makes you think you could be successful at this late stage?
Well, I can't really speak to Carlos's reasons for pulling out. This is a Herculean task. If you read the regulations in the statutes and that have been published on the FIA website, certainly the deck is stacked in favor of the incumbent. And that's deliberately so. I mean, these statute changes over the last 4 years have deliberately been made to centralize power in one office. That being said, actually the timing is perfect. We have always planned on hitting after the Macau General Assembly, because that's the time when we knew what the regulations were going to be. As we all saw a couple of weeks ago, those regulations did change. Not so significantly that it's impossible to do, but we do still have 5 months to go out there. And so what is the plan? This is retail politics. There are 245 clubs that we need to reach, that we need to go out and explain to them why we can give them better value than what they're getting right now. We can actually give them everything that they are getting right now from Mohammed, which is that he does genuinely pay attention to the smaller clubs. But they can also have professionalism. They can also have a club that considers the major championships and isn't in conflict with the major championships. they can have a club that they can be proud of. So that's what we can offer them, is professionalism and consideration for what they need as smaller clubs to grow and thrive.
Christian?
Just for me, not more sport. You touched on the team you need a team. Is it already complete, and can you give us any details about it?
So there are two parts to the team. There's obviously the people that help us with all of the logistics of what we need to do. That team is complete. We have a very good team of people behind all of this, behind our message. There's a dozen people that are helping us with that. I'm very, very privileged to have some very high level advice on what we need to do. In terms of the presidential list that has to be submitted, there are some vacancies still in that. And I would be disingenuous to say that there's not. Because we've been trying to keep this campaign below the radar, we've had to do that. You know, there is no such thing as a secret motorsport or in mobility for that matter. So if we're above the parapet and we're talking to people, that wouldn't have been a secret. But this is now the time. That's the task for the next 30 days, is to go out, especially to that group of people, and complete that list. But we have a great start on that. I'm very proud of the professionals that we've been able to attract. People are genuinely hungry for the opportunity to do a better job at the FIA. People are genuinely looking for leadership that understands and is servant leadership, is what I call it. The goal of a president should always be to create a vision and then provide the tools that people need to create that vision. That's what I've done everywhere in my career, and everybody I talk to leaps at this opportunity. They're like, this is what we need at the FIA.
Ed?
Ed Straw from Race. You mentioned the need for stewards in competition to be given support and free from interference. Can we infer from that that's not been the case? And if so, where has the support been lacking and where has there been interference?
Well, I think you yourself have reported on interference cases as we've gone along. I won't get into too many specifics because, frankly, I'm subject to a non-disclosure agreement. That being said, I do think we are very, very thin on professional stewards at that level. We have some great people who are doing an amazing job, and not just in Formula One, in WEC. You know, I've been privileged to be a steward for over a decade at the 24 Hours of Le Mans, in Rallycross, in Rally. There are some incredibly dedicated people giving their time, but the support that they're getting isn't that big. The entire officiating department of the FIA is 1.5 people, right? And they have a contractor who I love, Dennis Dean. I mean, he has been a brother of mine for forever, helping them train people, but that's it. That's the entire training department for the stewards at the FIA. This is an area where we need to do better. If you look at other major sports, and I'm not just thinking, you know, this sport, motorsport. If you look at other sports like the NFL, they have a huge training department for their officials. That's a very difficult job. If you look at the NBA, huge training department. These are professional sports that take officiating seriously because it's important for the fans that they know that there is that level playing field. People have the professional support. Right now, the stewards are mostly doing it for themselves. You know, we have great people in race control, but we've already gone through an entire room full of people in race control here in Formula One. And, you know, this isn't the second team we have now. These people are wonderful. They are doing a great job, but largely unsupported. You know, there is not another group that's coming up. So we've got to get in there and work on that. This pool, we should be thinking 10 years in the future. Because to be a chairman of a Formula One race, I guarantee you, if I hadn't had 10 years as a second steward in Formula One before I got to be chairman of the stewards, I wouldn't have been able to have done it. Because when you get in the room with powerhouses like Adrian Newey, believe me, you've got to know what you're talking about.
John? John over the race. Tim, obviously we know the complications election process and you've got to speak to 245 clubs. Are you able to shed light on how much support you've had already behind the scenes and where do you see the kind of key battlegrounds and key areas that are going to swing this election?
So the people I've talked to are very selective, and frankly, they're friends of mine. Because that's where I know that I can keep this a secret. And so clearly the friends of mine are gonna tell me that I'm doing a great job. The job now is to go out and explain to these lots of small clubs around the world and in some very difficult places to reach. And explain to them why we can do a better job, why this is a benefit to them. Like I said, this is retail politics. This is door to door. It's shaking hands, kissing babies. It's all that kind of stuff we talk about in American politics. You know, I won't kiss too many babies, but that's what it is. And it's going out there and explaining to them the benefit, explaining to them how we can bring value, how we can restructure the internal FIA to do a better job, how we can deliver resources to them, and how we can do it in a way that they can have pride in the FIA, pride in the federation.
Tom?
Yeah, Tom Rubin from Business F1. I've got 4 questions, but I'll be very quick. If Carlos Sanz had thrown his hat in, would you be standing here now?
You know, again, I can't talk for Carlos. I was aware of Carlos's thoughts before it came out.
It's a question for you. Would you be? Yes or no?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. We've been thinking about this a long time.
By my reckoning, a successful campaign or even an unsuccessful one would cost between 4 and 6 million pounds or dollars. Where will those resources come from?
Well, there is a coalition of, you're not that far wrong on the numbers. There is a coalition of people. There are a lot of people around the world who are looking for change and are willing to invest in it. You know, they are people who are as dedicated to the success of the Federation as we are. So it's a coalition of people.
I noticed your 3 biggest supporters, David, Robert and Ben, aren't here today. Is there a reason for that?
Well, David is here.
He's
David is running a Grand Prix right now, so he's a bit busy. Sorry, who else are you?
David, Ben Cousins and Robert.
Well, Ben is also hard at work at the moment as well, although I believe he's on the webinar. So yes, I mean, I have good support in the background, certainly from Motorsport UK, certainly from the RAC, for which I'm extremely grateful. They have given me great advice. Robert, to be honest, is not central to our campaign. Robert has given me a lot of advice. He and I have known each other for 20 years. So that's not unusual. And obviously Robert has found himself in an extremely difficult position. I think it's a very brave thing to do, to resign from the position as he did. It's the first time it's ever happened in the FIA. I mean, that speaks volumes. There's somebody who is a principled, honest person who was not able to do the job, you know, in the position he was in. So, and for him to have resigned, it speaks volumes. But he's only one of many. I mean, you look at the number of people who have resigned from the FIA because they have gone in there with all best intentions and discovered that they have no opportunity to affect change, no opportunity to say, no, this is a bad idea, Mr. President. You know, that speaks volumes.
Yeah. Have you spoken to Formula One Group about your candidates?
Out of courtesy, I definitely spoke to Stefano. I talked to him, in fact, yesterday to let him know that we would be doing this. As you can tell by the venue, we are not supported by Formula One Group. You know, Stefano and Formula One Group have an obligation to stay neutral in this, which is what the discussion he and I had yesterday.
Thank you.
Chris?
Chris Medham from Racer. Tim, you've launched this under the title of FIA Forward. Can we take from that do you believe the FIA has gone backwards over the last 4 years? And do you need to then go backwards yourself to be able to move it forwards?
Well, I do feel that the restructuring needs to happen. Have we gone backwards? In some areas, yes. I would say that there are still a number of very dedicated people working at the FIA. And to be honest, the one area of the FIA that has gone forwards is their ability to write a press release celebrating small victories. So, you know, I think that's a little ironic, but it's true. They're doing a good job. Those people work very hard. They deserve leadership that provides them with tools, provides them with a vision, provides them with resources, and more than anything else, does not have a reign of terror every time they walk into the office. You know, so I think that by just providing good leadership and good management and bringing in the kinds of people that, in fact, Mohammed, in all honesty, did bring in to begin with, he brought some great people. Natalie Robin, as an example, was a fantastic leader. I mean, I got to interact with her quite a bit. I am in awe of her capabilities, and she just could not make change in that organization. So, you know, I think that's what we can bring initially. There is that leadership. And I don't think we need to break the thing. I am not a revolutionary. I'm somebody who will evolve this forward.
Luke?
Luke Smith from Candidacy. Tim, you talked about integrity at the very start. How much do you think that's been eroded away in the last 4 years at the FIA in terms of the global image that's put out? We've seen headlines and stories coming out about what's going on there, and how damaging would another 4 years of the incumbent be to that global image?
Well, let me start off by saying that I don't believe that the integrity problem at the FIA is the British media. I genuinely think what's happening is a reporting of what is truly in everybody's mind. If you are investing in the sport, if you are a big mobility club whose name is attached to the FIA, right now you're wondering about that investment. You're wondering, when is the next bomb going to get dropped? You know, when is the next scandal going to come out? When are we going to fuss again about drivers' underwear, when that could be handled with you know, an easy discussion with the drivers? You know, it's not wrong. I mean, you don't want to be wearing nylon underwear when you know, but is that really what the FIA president should be worried about? You know, that's an easy conversation. What we need to focus on is leadership. And I think, you know, leadership that is principled, leadership where people can trust the federation, that does what it says, isn't worried about our own power. The FIA has all the power it needs. I mean, it's baked into the regulations. We don't need to show that off. It's, you know, for me, this phrase servant leadership is absolutely key to this. We are here to serve race fans, mobility users, road users around the world. And for me, the thing that I'm just in awe of is the opportunity to go out and affect people's daily lives through mobility, through safety, that kind of thing. And it's very hard to do when you are not a trusted source.
Mark?
Mark O'Brien's was what I did. You mentioned a bit that it was a little bit like American politics and maybe the presidential race there. Are you and your team in any way concerned that this won't be a clean fight?
Well, I don't expect Mohammed to give up. This will be a close fight. This will be a difficult fight. I don't plan to go down into the gutter. I plan on simply speaking the truth. You know, I think that this is about the politics of it. For me, it's not about the personalities. I've known Mohammed for a very long time. I've respected him as the head of an ASN that has genuinely developed motorsport in his country. So from that perspective, I think, you know, we can do this respectfully. But I've been doing this for 34 years as well. You know, I've stood on a scaffold tower and officiated a rallycross race with a pair of binoculars and one radio. So I've been at the grassroots level. I've also been in the stewards room at Formula One here. So I've seen the entire gamut. I've managed races in Brazil where, you know, I was out stringing cable at midnight myself. But on the other hand, I've also been in the World Motorsport Council for 16 years. So I've seen all of this, and what I think is I can bring leadership with experience, with knowledge that people can trust, and they know that I am trustworthy.
Andrew?
Tim, there's already been one conflict of interest accusation made against you by the current FIA leadership. Are you concerned that they'll use the new statutes and their power of the nominations committee to thwart your candidacy in any way?
It's a great question. Actually, they never directly made a conflict of interest challenge against me. I think Gus Verstappen may have made that inference. You know, I've been a Formula One steward since 2009. Everybody in the paddock knows that my dad founded McLaren Racing back in '63. He sold it in '82. I was 16 at the time, right? I've never worked for McLaren, never had a relationship with McLaren other than I certainly shake hands with Zach in the paddock. But, you know, nobody's actually had a problem with me being associated historically with McLaren. So, and by the way, in my bio that's published in the media every single week when I'm a steward, it's first line has always said, Tim Mayer, son of Teddy Mayer, blah, 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 blah. So all the teams know, all the teams have known, and nobody has ever objected. I will tell you the proudest moment of my officiating career. Dad at the time was running Penske Racing, and I penalized him at Motegi, Japan, for a pit stop violation that he pulled with Paul Tracy. They appealed the penalty. We went to the appeal process and I won. He said, Tim, the worm has turned.
Alan?
Actually, I'm gonna ask a very simple question, but on the sort of nuts and bolts of it, I mean, you satisfied that you will get support you require from, say, for example, South America? It seems to be very cohesive, loss and largely pro-mind Pennsylvania.
You know, again, I think there's two parts to that. One is to demonstrate a better way. As I've said, I think we have an obligation to go there and earn their vote. The second is, you know, I have in my pocket here a letter from my kids who I said I was going to withdraw their pocket money, and they wrote the letter and they said, Dad, you've been so good with the democracy in our house, and you know, I'm so supportive of everything you're doing. You've just done a fantastic job. These letters of support are very difficult to swallow when you know how they're obtained. It's very difficult to see those as being real support. But again, it's incumbent upon me to offer an alternative, to offer value, and show them that there is a better way. There's only one place that this matters. It's the voting in December that is at the General Assembly. So the letters of support, I'm not too worried about. I know how they're obtained. I know what happens, and I don't blame them in the slightest.
Tom?
Okay, Telegraph. The fact of you being American, do you think that is significant? Triple A's history with the FIA, Liberty Media now owning Formula One. Do you think that can count for you or against you? Do you think that's significant?
Well, listen, I'm very proud to be American. Happy 4th of July, by the way. The timing is coincidental, not this isn't Independence Day for anybody. Listen, I think I have been given an amazing opportunity in my career. I have, through American motorsport, been thrust into a worldwide role that has allowed me to go around the world, meet the people that run racing in Singapore, in China, in Japan, and work with all of these areas, you know, throughout Asia, throughout the South America. You know, I was a TV producer in Brazil for 6 years. You know, so I've been to all of these different places, Argentina, and worked with all these people. So the president of the FIA is the president of a worldwide organization. Why should they trust me? Well, because I've got the experience. That was because I had the opportunity as an American to go out and do that. Now the job is to give that opportunity to people from all over the world.
Joe?
Joe Slay with JSPO. Can you talk about, if you win, what you would do in terms of structuring and what the job of the president would be? Would you have a CEO like Natalie or that sort of style of management?
So I think there's two phases. The phase one is right the ship, in which I would be very, very involved right from day one. And that has to happen urgently, and there isn't time to get a CEO on board. But I do think that the structure of the FIA calls out for professional management at that level. This is a two-stage thing, so the president needs to articulate a vision, go out and work with the member clubs. The CEO needs to run the organization. So I do believe in that two-tiered structure. Again, I had the privilege of working with Natalie. She was fantastic. If I could have her back tomorrow, just like that. But the other thing is, what would I do? What would I do first? I'd get a good night's sleep. Would be a great start. You know, it's a job that principally requires people to listen empathetically. You know, to be a good listener and take that information back and articulate a vision at the FIA in Geneva, in France, and in London, and to help those people act on that vision. And that's the job of the president of the FIA. It's not to get involved in, you know, trying to mess around in the politics of any individual championship. There are people and good people for that.
I'm told there's time for two more questions. We'll start with this one.
James Ellingworth from the Associated Press. You talked about how the deck is stacked in favour of the incumbent. You've mentioned, I think, terror. Do you see signs that people will fear retaliation for working with you, talking with you, joining your list? And will it be a small victory to make it onto the ballot at all?
Well, I'm not starting this without a clear expectation that not only are we going to make the ballot, but that we're going to win. There is too much at stake to start this process without real confidence that we can do this. The deck is stacked, but we know the game. We know what the rules are. We know where the challenges will lie. I think this will be an interesting 5 months for all of us. But that being said, it's one we're up for. So, you know, it's not a matter of that. I do think that it is very difficult for people to put their head above the parapet, because we've seen time and time again, you do that, you can get fired or held back or not allowed to come to this or that or the other thing. We've seen, you know, members of a World Council, which is unprecedented. And by the way, there is nothing in the statutes that says that the FIA president has the power to keep somebody out of the World Council meetings. It doesn't exist. You know, so, you know, has he done it? Yes, we've seen it. It's happened. Has he fired Senate members who opposed him? 100%. Those people are hired by, you know, the World Councils. They shouldn't be able to be fired by the president, although now he has that power in the recent changes under the statutes. So first of all, you know, my goal is to roll that back. Got to get there first. Have to explain to the members why these are bad ideas. They look good on paper if you don't debate them, if you don't hear what's behind them. But if you actually look at the regulations, and that's something I do quite well, you look at the regulations, you look at the details, there are a lot of pitfalls that he's put in there. We know that game. We can play it too.
Everyone who's done the job over the years, they've all been men of, they've all loads of money, millionaires and all the rest of it. If you did the job, would you where would you get the money you need to do?
Well, as I said, I've had an extraordinary career. I've had an opportunity to make money in doing it. You know, I've not always been a volunteer. The reason I could be a volunteer as a steward around the world, as a race director around the world, as many other things I've done. I mean, if I look at the number of hours I've dedicated towards the FIA, it actually makes me a little nauseous when I think about it. But I can afford to do it. Now, are you right? Am I 100 millionaire? I wish. I'm not, but I hope you like my suit. All right, ladies and gentlemen, on the way out, I have some things for you, including a stick that has on it photography for you to use. We have the press releases, we have all of that on a stick for you to take with you as you go out. I hope you'll all wear an FIA Forward pin in the paddock and put an FIA Forward sticker on your computer. And I will be available here afterwards, but thank you all for coming.